What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today we're covering day 2 of the NFL draft. I'm going to give each team my day 2 grade for their NFL draft, and then tomorrow we will give my overall draft grades via tier list ranking, but also then ranking who I think had the best NFL draft. Also, real quick, I do want to note, apologies for my camera falling. I can't believe I didn't notice that throughout the video, but I have it in a more secure area today, so hopefully a little less of me kind of shifting down throughout the video. So that was weird, not good production value. I do apologize. I'm obviously trying to bring y'all the best content possible, but let's just jump right into it. Let's just waste no time. And we start with the Arizona Cardinals. This is an easy A for me to give out. B.J. Ojulari, Garrett Williams, Michael Wilson. These are all my guys-ish. Garrett Williams was an underrated corner that I had a lot of hopes for. And if he doesn't get hurt in the Notre Dame game, I think he goes a lot earlier than this. Michael Wilson was in my wide receiver, my guys category. And B.J. Ojulari wasn't in my edge, my guys, but I do think he got a little underrated throughout the process. So I'm looking at Arizona on top of what they did. That was awesome in the first round, adding edge reinforcements. And they already have Thomas and Najee Sanders there, who are bigger guys. So B.J. Ojulari can just be a DPR, and that's fine to start. Garrett Williams gives them some immediate reinforcements and much-needed help on the outside at corner. And Michael Wilson, to me, this screams DeAndre Hopkins replacement. So, yeah, easy A for me to give out to the Arizona Cardinals. Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons. And apologies, you're also going to see the NFL Network grade, but this was really the only place I could find that had all day 2 picks in kind of one spot as opposed to going round by round. So apologies, but now you get, 2 insights maybe. Falcons, I can't get an A here. Sorry, NFL Network, I got to disagree here. I like Bergeron, and I don't mind him going 38. And this is kind of left guard right now, and then maybe, some time he develops into a tackle. We'll see. But I think this is an upgrade over Elijah Wilkinson, and he fits that Arthur Smith run game. And, man, are the Atlanta Falcons trying to give Bijan Robinson the best O-line possible, or are they trying to run on the ground, or what? So, yeah, I like the value of Bergeron. I also think Zach Harrison's a good player, and 75 was about the right spot. This whole draft process, I've been saying I want them to add that big body physical type on the other side of Arnold Ebiketie, who's a little bit lighter frame, more of a bendy, speed-based edge rusher. So I'll go B+. Can't quite give it an A, and part of it, 2 picks versus 3, so naturally kind of skewed there. But, I think Harrison fills one of those 2 defensive holes, but I'm still kind of looking at corner, and they went out of the top 100 picks. And I know they got Jeff Okudah, but then they had to release Hayward. I thought they could use one more guy there, so that keeps them out of the A territory range. All right, on to the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, and I will say I am grading on a curve here because they did, Baltimore in this case doesn't have a second rounder. And that became Roquan Smith. So I am just taking into account what you did with the picks you had. So I know I talked about the Falcons. They didn't have a third pick. That's not necessarily a negative, but because they didn't have that third pick, they didn't get that corner. So I felt like there was a missing ingredient that they needed to add. Here for Baltimore, with the 1 pick they got, pairing up Trenton Simpson with Roquan Smith, so you can even look at their second rounder being Roquan Smith and their third rounder being Trenton Simpson. I love the value. I mean, Trenton Simpson could have been a first rounder in my books, and if not, easily a top 40, top 50 guy. So I think they got extremely great value here. And this is kind of another swing of the bat at Patrick Queen, who ultimately has not worked out. So just because Queen hasn't worked out, don't let that deter you from continuing to try to address the position. And that they did with Simpson, I think, again, they got fantastic value. Again, it's so hard being a Steelers fan, watching the Ravens in their process just continuously win again and again and again and again. Then we get to the Bills here at the next team up. I guess we're not talking about picks here, but yeah, I'll go with an A here. Yeah, I mean, O'Cyrus Torrence in the second round is fantastic value. They easily could have taken him in the first, right? If Kincaid was gone or something thereabout. And also Dorian Williams. He doesn't have the massive Tremaine Edmonds, but coverage ability, sure, absolutely. Has the twitchy athleticism, and he's kind of a new age linebacker. So do I worry about that linebacker tandem of Milano and Williams against the run? Yes, especially considering they play a lot of too high safety looks. So they're already kind of light in the box, and Edmonds kind of allowed them to play that. I don't know if Williams will. So they may struggle against the run, but it's a passing league, and they're a zone-heavy defense. Dorian Williams is going to be great cover in the middle of the field. And so he kind of fills the need there. And then Torrance, kind of getting back to him, I think he's an upgrade over Ryan Bates. Plug and play right guard. That's what he played at Florida. And I think he's got underrated movement skills. I know he's not, running, the most insane 40 time or 100th percentile there or anything like that. But I don't think he's a slouch. And I don't think his feet are in the mud by any stretch of the imagination either. So I think he can be just fine in that blocking scheme. And he definitely is an upgrade over Ryan Bates in my books. Next, we get to Carolina, Jonathan Mingo and DJ Johnson. So I really like the Mingo pick, and it was one that I had predicted in my final mock. DJ Johnson, I can't say that I saw coming. He does have the 6'4", 260, the bigger frame that I talked about I wanted for Carolina. Has a nice body complement on the other side of Brian Burns, but I'll match the NFL Network grade here of C+. Like Mingo, DJ Johnson, though, a bit of a head scratcher, but he does have the athleticism and the physical traits that could make him into a quality NFL starter. But right now, it's a little bit of a projection. And I feel like there were other potential avenues in which you could fill that role, and maybe even kind of like trade back and play the board there. It takes two to tango. Obviously, you need a trade partner, but yeah, DJ Johnson was a little surprising there for me. But again, I do like the Mingo pick, so I'll go C+. You can convince me that it should be a B-. Bears then. Gervon Dexter. I had mocked Chicago Dexter a lot in the third round, but here they take him in the second, kind of get that upside play, that disruptive, difference-making 3-tech that Eberflus needs. It's definitely, going to be a work in progress, but Dexter has the potential to become a awesome 3-tech for Eberflus. Tyreek Stevenson, I think that's really good value at 56. You let him continue to be a great man press guy, or quote-unquote man press. You take advantage of his press ability, and then he just sits in the soft squat zone and let him play cover 2, where I think he will thrive. And then Zach Pickens. So Pickens, Dexter, one of these two guys could be that disruptive 3-tech, and or the other way around is, these guys are just nice, solid defensive tackles, and that's a spot where I think Chicago can get better anyway. So Pickens and Dexter are both super explosive out of their stance. Dexter, though, comes with more immediate run-stopping production out of college. Pickens, more pass rush production out of college. So this could even create a nice symbiotic relationship where one guy's strengths kind of hide the other guy's weaknesses, and then vice versa. But also, if Dexter figures it out as a pass rusher, this could be a mean duo there in the middle. So I'll go B+ here for Chicago. I like what they did on day 2. All right, next up, we get the Cincinnati Bengals. DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, two guys that I really like. I'll start with Battle just because the athletic testing wasn't great, but the player himself, I love a lot. And his 40 is actually better than Xavier McKinney, who is, lazy scouting here because of the helmet or whatever, but he does give me a lot of Xavier McKinney vibes. So I'm going to go with an A. I think the coverage versatility of DJ Turner is a perfect guy to add to Lou Anarumo's secondary. And then Jordan Battle kind of gives you that Von Bell reinforcements. And honestly, I think Jordan Battle is probably best suited as a strong safety versus a free. So yeah, I'll go with an A here. I love what Cincy did with their secondary there in day 2. And they just have a great knack of being able to future-proof their roster. And I'll talk about that more in their overall draft grades video coming tomorrow. Cleveland, Cedric Tillman, Siaki Ika. Yeah, I'll go B+. You know what? Forget about it. Let's go with an A. I like Tillman, and I wanted them to add another wide receiver. In my mock, it was Wilson, but Wilson, Tillman, one of these big body, few possession X types that there were in this class. I like that they got one of the two. I think you do better than Donovan Peoples-Jones. He has this one note that he plays with, and that vertical field stretching ability hasn't done a whole lot. It's only gotten so far. But I think Tillman can be that possession guy. You move Cooper around. He does a little bit of everything. That allows you more in the slot, field stretcher, yak guy. All of a sudden, I'm looking at that wide receiver trio, and it's looking really, really well-rounded. And then you still have Donovan Peoples-Jones to force the issue over the top. And Siaki was another pick that I got right. He did feel like the right guy for them to take at 98. Him and Dalvin Tomlinson, two big body, space-eating nose tackle types, and should be pretty good against the run, where Cleveland's been abysmal the last handful of seasons, while also Dalvin Tomlinson upside as a pass rusher and kind of underrated in that camp. And Siaki Ika's got a nice spin and swim move. He's got a little bit of a finesse pass rush background and some production with it. So I think these kind of address their two most major needs in my eyes right now for Cleveland. Maybe a linebacker as well. You could be you can convince me that was the one area that I wish they could have addressed here. But Tillman, Ika, I think they got good value, and they addressed their two most glaring needs on day 2 of the draft, which is impressive because they only had those 2/3 to start out their draft. Dallas, yeah, I definitely can't go with an A- here. Shoemaker's fine. I was a little perplexed that it wasn't Darnell Washington. And again, I don't hate Shoemaker, but I don't know how much of a difference he is versus Ferguson and Hendershot, to be honest with you. And then Overshown, hey, my off-ball linebacker 5. I love what Overshown can be, so that's the pick I like a little bit more. I'll go B-. Overshown kind of keeps us away from being a C, and I think him plus Leighton Vander Esch could be really, really fun. Overshown's put in work and grown as a tackler, so I think the work ethic is there for him to keep getting better. And safety, turned linebacker, good coverage feel. I think that's beneficial in that defense as well. But yeah, Shoemaker was a little bit of a head scratcher for me, so I'll go B- there for Dallas. But they also were, okay after day 1, Monty Smith. So they addressed some needs, but they just kind of divvied it with guys that maybe weren't always the most consensus mock picks or something like that. Denver, they had an interesting draft. Marvin Mims, I like that pick a lot. Obviously, one of my guys. He was my top my guy receiver. I felt like I was higher on him more than most, so therefore he was the top my guy. Not that he was my top wide receiver. Drew Sanders is interesting. Vance Joseph likes his blitzing linebacker, so this is actually a really good fit for him. But then Riley Moss, because Vance Joseph is more of a man press guy, and Riley Moss, to me, is a zone coverage specialist. So I like Mims. I really like Sanders and the value they got him with. Moss is a little strange to me, but we'll see. I think they could use another corner, and maybe they see Moss as someone who could play some safety too. I know they eventually kind of addressed that position on day 3, but maybe kind of scratch my head at where he'll fit into this. But otherwise, Mims, Sanders, that's good enough for me. I'll go with the B+ here for Denver. All in all, really solid haul there on day 2. Lions, this is where, and I think my overall grades video, I'll hit on this again there. Their first round, not great, but when you just take those names, Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell, and then throw them in with who they took on day 2, aside from Broderick Martin. I think that was a bit of a reach. But at pick 96, it's not the end of the world. But when you just add those first rounders into this list of names, it's like, man, the Lions got Brian Branch, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jack Campbell. Sheesh, that's a good first 2 days of work there for Detroit. So maybe the order's a little wonky, but I think I gave them bad grades in the first round video. But overall, I think the overall grade is going to be a lot better for Detroit. And part of that is their second round. Brian Branch, top 10 player on my big board. He was the single biggest difference between where I had him on my board versus where they went. So I kind of have to give him an A here. Laporta also a really good selection. And I love Hendon Hooker with where they got him. Certainly could have gone a lot earlier, but they get him in the 3rd round. And I think minimum, he maintains the status quo post Jared Goff, which if they maintain that status quo but get cheaper at the position, this roster is going to get even better, which is, this roster is already up and coming. If they get even better, then they might become the clear frontrunner of the NFC North with some time. But we'll have to see. I'll give them an A. I like a lot of what they did. Broderick Martin was a bit of a reach, so maybe A- is better, but I'll go with an A there because Branch, what a steal. Packers, this one's interesting. Pass catchers galore, and I said throughout the live show and even in my mock before or in that final predictive mock before the draft started, I thought the second round was going to be pass catcher heavy, and that it was. I thought it was going to be Musgrave and Downs. Ends up being Musgrave and Reed. I would have preferred Downs. I would have preferred Tank Dell. I would have preferred Hyatt maybe even. But nonetheless, they did get a wide receiver and a guy who can win at all 3 levels, 4.44 speed. So it's not that I don't like Reed. I just prefer maybe a round later. Then you throw Tucker Kraft in the mix. And Green Bay likes doubling at positions. But normally it's like last year where Watson was a 2nd rounder, Dobbs was a 5th rounder. That's where they double dip. And they'll do that at edge. They'll do it at tackle sometimes. But here they do it at the 2nd round, 3rd round with tight end. Now, do I think Matt LaFleur could make good use of both these tight ends? I actually think he can. So I'm pretty optimistic about this draft. Reed was a little bit of a reach. But all in all, I'm really perplexed with what they're going to do with these tight ends. And I think they add a lot of athleticism to the position that we really haven't seen Green Bay have in a little bit of time now. I'll go B+ for Green Bay. And I love that they're putting weapons around Jordan Love. All right, Houston then. Juice Scruggs, Tank Dell. I like the Dell pick a lot more. Scruggs, it's nothing against Scruggs. I think he's fine. He's a good player, and he's a good zone blocking fit for Bobby Slowick and what they're going to run there on the O-line. Center was the big position of need, but also he comes with guard flexibility. He could be your Shaq Mason replacement in a year's time. I'll give it a B. Yeah, I'll go with a B. I'll match the NFL Network grade here. I think Scruggs is a solid starter. Maybe Whippler without the guard flexibility. Maybe that was the deterrent to go to Scruggs here. And then Tank Dell, he gets to stay in the same city. Was a volume wide receiver in college, so I think he could kind of do the same stuff depending on where this wide receiver room moves in a couple years' time. Inside-out flexibility, but I'm hoping that he plays on the outside and can do a lot of the same stuff that Brandon Cooks can do. And honestly, I think he is up for that challenge. I think he can do what they asked Brandon Cooks to do. Now we just got to see it on the field. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts. If I didn't say already, that was a B for Houston. The Colts, the Colts are one of the biggest winners of the draft for me. They get their quarterback of the future. I love what they did on day 3, and I love just everything they did at corner in general throughout this draft. So we'll save that for tomorrow's video. With Julius Brents, Josh Downs, this is an A+. This a steal of a value in Downs to be competition with Isaiah McKenzie and maybe just outright their week 1 slot wide receiver. And Julius Brents was one of my guys. I love Julius Brents. He was number 43 on my big board, and somehow they got him a pick. I don't want to say somehow, but they got him even lower than that. So, to me, automatic good value. And I love in that cover 3 heavy Gus Bradley defense, his athleticism, his ability to flip his hips, his long arms, getting into receiving pockets. I just think he's going to be a playmaker for them. And I like Isaiah Rodgers, but I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with him and Kenny Moore, because maybe Rodgers moves into the slot, but they added a lot of length on the outside in the cornerback position throughout day 2 and then even on day 3. But easy A for me to give to Indy. Jacksonville, B- is a solid grade. I'll go C+. I'll go a half step down. It's nothing against Brenton Strange. He's fine. And he's kind of like Jonathan Mingo, where the tape shows a better player than the production does. But I just, and I mean, they ultimately get the guy I kind of want him to take in round 2 in the 5th round. So we'll talk about that again tomorrow. But I just think there maybe edge could have been in play here too. So I think there was just a different spot there when you're working on a long-term extension with Evan Ingram. Maybe there's a different area to go. But other side of this argument is Doug Peterson loves 2 tight end sets, and Strange is much better blocker than Ingram, so it's different skill sets enough to where these guys can both coexist. And then Tank Bigsby, I actually love as like the power back versus ETN's home run ability, the power to the dash. So I actually really like the value there at Bigsby, and I've remained high on Bigsby throughout this process when it feels like his name has simmered a little bit, but I still really like the prospect. So I'll still go C+. I'm intrigued with what Brenton Strange turns into, and that's kind of where my hesitation lands and why they're not a little bit higher. Chiefs, I am not going to give them an A-. That is certain. I would have gone Michael Wilson or Cedric Tillman over Rashee Rice, but the fact that Rice went before those 2 guys signals to me that there might have been some medical red flags that popped up, or maybe some issues that teams were a little hesitant or weary of. But Rice is that physical possession X type potentially, but to me, he just plays too Velcro to a corner. It's like, once you beat a guy, leave him behind. There are times where you need to make that contested catch. There's also times where it's like, you don't need to bring that corner back into play. So it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship between me and Rashee Rice. And Wanya Morris over DeJuan Jones. Once they traded up to 92, I was like, DeJuan Jones, easy peasy. They're going to get Orlando Brown on a 3rd-round contract, and he's essentially willing to play right tackle. Just going off what a lot of people have comped him to. I'm not crazy about comps in general, but a lot of people have comped it, so I'll use it for this example. And then they go Wanya Morris. Really good moving center, and I think the mirroring ability is there. Little hit or miss at times, though, at Oklahoma, but the talent's there. Former 5-star recruit, has a frame, maybe needs to gain a little bit of weight. 307 might not totally play at the NFL level. We're talking about Cody Mauch at like 305 needing to bulk up, so I think the same should be true here for Wanya Morris at 307. But with a little bit of work, I could see him becoming a steal, and Kansas City's known for stealing offensive linemen, right? Like Creed Humphrey ended up being the best center of that class. They got him late 2nd. Trey Smith, absolute steal. They got him in the 6th. So don't rule out this team's ability to evaluate day 2, day 3 on the offensive line. So they like Morris. That makes me kind of like him a little bit more. But I could also see a world where it's Lucas Niang or Darren Kennard starting at right tackle, and they give Morris a year, kind of a redshirt season basically, to bulk up maybe a little bit and kind of polish up his technique and get him ready to be a future start at the position. I'll go B-. Again, I'm a little hesitant on both these guys, but when Kansas City, who is typically drafted really well, takes these guys, it makes me like them a little bit more. I'll trust them, but I'll go with the B- here. All right, next up, we get the Raiders with Michael Mayer, Byron Young, Trey Tucker. It felt like they handed in the wrong Cincinnati wide receiver card with Trey Tucker. I did not like that pick over Tyler Scott. Byron Young, not a bad edge player, or excuse me, D tackle. That's right. This is the other Byron Young. This is Alabama D tackle. They needed an upgrade at D tackle and specifically for run stopping ability. So I don't hate that, but it's a low floor play for me, which at 70, you have to pick your poison. You're either taking a guy that has concerns and issues that you could take Wanya Morris, right? Like where it's like there's things that need to be polished, but if it works out, there is an insane value to be had there. Or you take these low floor guys where it's like, I know what Byron Young from Alabama is, and I'm comfortable with that. So that's kind of meh. It's fine. It's not a bad pick. Michael Mayer was an interesting one. This is a New England pick. This is Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels showing their true colors through and through. And Austin Hooper's a 1-year contract. O.J. Howard's a 1-year contract. And ultimately, those guys, they have been mid tight ends in the NFL at best. So Mayer, I think, comes with more upside and also a fantastic contested catch guy. To me, he has the best contested catch skill set of any pass catcher in this class. Wide receiver, tight end, running back, doesn't matter. So adding him into an offense, I think, helps out Jimmy Garoppolo and adds a different skill set to that offense. I mean, Devontae Adams is good in contested catch spots, but I think Mayer, that's going to be his role. That's going to be his thing. So all in all, it's not a bad day 2. I'll go B-. Mayer, you also had to move up to get him, so you had to give up some capital to make that happen. And Byron Young is fine. Like, I'm okay with it. And then Trey Tucker, not really in love with that. If that was Tyler Scott, it's a different story, and that grade goes up pretty drastically. Then we get the Chargers here. I'll go with a flat A. I like this day 2 a ton. Tuli Tuipulotu, that's your insurance in the case of a Bosa or a Mac injury. And then also, like, I think there's a world where all three of these guys can be on the field at the same time. So finding that third pass rusher was something I wanted the Chargers to get, and that they did. And then Daiyan Henley. I didn't really talk about linebacker a whole lot once we get into the meat of draft season, but it made a lot of sense for them to find someone else to partner up with Eric Kendricks. And Kendricks isn't the same guy he was 5 years ago, but still has a good feel for zone coverage, and maybe he's lost a step, but still can cover a fair amount of ground. And then Daiyan Henley, 6 years of college football, feels like a guy who has it above the shoulders and can contribute right away, and has all the athleticism. So yeah, I love that 1-2 punch. And for a team that's going to play a lot of zone coverage, assuming here, they did play a little bit more man once J.C. Jackson, right before he got hurt, and felt like he got more out of Jackson with it. So we'll see. But if they're going to run a lot of zone, I think Henley plus Kendricks up the middle, that's going to be fantastic. And then Tuipulotu, that's a nice injury insurance / third pass rusher in general. So yeah, I'll give the Chargers an A here. I really like that haul. Rams, they also had a pretty solid day 2. And Steve Avila, for a team that wants to win through the air, get the best pass protecting interior guy in the class. Love it. I think 36 is a good spot to take him. I don't think it's a reach. I think that's just about right. Byron Young, I think the other Byron Young that I kind of mistook myself for earlier, but Byron Young, a little bit older, but he also has a lot of athleticism, and this team desperately needed edge, so take a shot on the athlete, and maybe because he's a little more on the older side, you're hoping that he's physically mature and his body is ready to contribute right away. I could see that logic and that line of thinking. And then Kobe Turner, man. I love that he went here, and especially after they lose Greg Gaines. I think Kobe Turner needed a guy who can keep him clean in run defense, and Aaron Donald has proven to be someone who can certainly do that. Turner is kind of like poor man's Kalijah Kancey this year, but I go back to my early interior defensive line rankings. My honorable mentions to round out the video were Kalijah Kancey, who obviously no longer an honorable mention, and then Kobe Turner. And I thought I was going to be high on Turner, putting him on my big board at 100, and then the NFL Stock Exchange guys have him both in the 80s, and then he goes 89. So I just love that. I was hesitant to put him where I did just because I was a little afraid of what people were going to say. And also 1 year of ACC competition, that's something that should be taken into account here. But I love that Kobe Turner got this much love, and I love that he went in the top 90. You pair him up with Aaron Donald, it's just a little bit more pass rush for that team. So him plus Byron Young helping out that defensive line and getting some help for Aaron Donald. I'll give the Rams an A. I really like what they did on day 2. Now, a lot of these guys are my guys, and you're also projecting the athlete that is Byron Young to hit, but I'll give them an A. I think this was a really solid day's worth of work for the Rams and addressing positions they needed to attack. Dolphins, this one's an A. This one's an A. You look at the strengths of that Miami team, and on offense at speed, and now they've gotten another speed weapon, a guy who runs the same 40s Raheem Mostert, but doesn't have the wear and tear that Mostert or Jeff Wilson have. And then I look at Vic Fangio coming over as a DC, and the ball skills that Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey have, and then they add a corner with fantastic ball skills. And really, Cam Smith's calling card is his ball skills and ability to track the football in the air and go make a play on it. And they add him to that secondary. Jalen Ramsey played a lot more nickel down the stretch with Los Angeles, and I wonder if that ends up being his role. That, or I could see Cam Smith. I kind of saw him as maybe an inside-out tweener. Maybe he plays on the slot. However it shakes out, that defense that's going to play a lot of quarters and trust the ball skills of DBs to make plays in the air, now they add one more guy that's perfectly suited for that defense. And I've been saying down the stretch here, I like Darius Rush almost as much as I like Cam Smith if it's for a man defense. And then I like Cam Smith a ton in a zone-heavy defense. And he is going to a very zone-heavy defense. And then A-Chain in the third round, adding more speed and another receiving threat in that offense. Yeah, this has got to be an A for Miami. Love the work that they put in. Shout out to Will Grier. He did a great job. Then we get the Vikings. Only had the one day 2 pick. B+ from NFL Network. I'll go C flat. I'm not a huge Mekhi Blackmon fan. I do like a lot of what PFF does. I know Blackmon has great grades, but a limited athlete and a smaller frame. I'm just kind of worried. Maybe they'll play him in the nickel, and the plan is Byron Murphy and Andrew Booth Jr. / Caleb Evans on the outside. If that's the case, okay, this could work out. But I'm just a little hesitant to think that he's going to play on the outside. And also, they took him over Kelee Ringo and Darius Rush, which those guys fell for a reason. But to me, off my board, they would have been easy sprint the card in type of situation, especially Darius Rush. Would have loved to see him in this defense, but Ringo for that matter as well. So not one that I saw coming, and it's not necessarily the worst pick in the world, but yeah, it was a little bit of a head scratcher. I thought they could do better at the position. I held that against Washington at 16 in yesterday's video, so I have to hold it against the Vikings here. I'll give them a C. Next up, the Patriots. Keion White, who looked maybe the most visibly pissed I've ever seen of any NFL draft pick ever. What was that about? That kind of makes me want to ding this grade a little bit more. And then Marte Mapu, safety converted to linebacker coming out of Sacramento State. Looked pretty solid in the Senior Bowl, and this is a class light on linebackers, and especially guys who weigh 230 or more. Mapu checking in at 230. I'm interested to see what that could mean and how they might use him. So don't hate New England adding another linebacker in the mix, but I think Mapu could be a bit of a projection, but also maybe he works out better than I'm expecting him, giving him credit for. And then Keon White, he is a New England edge rusher. This little tweener could be a 3-4 DN, could be a 4-3 DN. Like, once you start like trying to figure out his position, it's like, this guy sounds like somebody Bill Belichick's going to love, and evidently that seems to be the case here. Again, the draft reaction is still baffling. I'm thinking about that nonstop nowadays. But yeah, this was a solid draft, a little bit of a projection for Mapu. You're hoping that works out. I'll go with a B. I like it, but you drafted two guys that still need some work and are still learning new positions. Keon White, been playing edge for 4 years. Mapu, safety converted to linebacker. So, you know, a little bit of a TBD as well for New England and their day two here. Saints, Isaiah Foskey, I actually really like that fit, to be honest with you. This is kind of Marcus Davenport, but take away the athleticism and instead make a better pass rusher. So I kind of like it there. And also maybe a potential future Cam Jordan replacement. And then Kendre Miller. I thought if they were going running back, it'd be Tajay Spears. You get the hometown kid in there, you know, it's all great. But Spears got a skill set overlap with Jamal Williams. So I don't hate Kendre Miller, who has a little bit more dash, can see the hole and hit it quicker, more receiving ability, a little bit more explosiveness and more elusiveness. So could create a nice backfield of future. And I watched Kendre Miller at TCU, and his tape does give me shades of like, now be careful saying this, because even if I say poor man's in front of this man's name, people are going to freak out. But very poor man's kind of Alvin Kamara. Like, he kind of does give me those vibes. So I think this is setting up a spot where it's going to be Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller for years to come in the backfield for New Orleans. So I am very interested to see what happens with Alvin Kamara. I don't think they'll deal him right after the draft or anything like that. But next offseason, he becomes a really interesting expendable asset for the Saints. And I think a guy that's going to have a ton of trade rumors around him. Yeah, I like what the Saints did here. I'll go B+ because Miller, obviously, you know, we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but I could see him, Williams, being a nice 1-2 punch in the backfield, and I actually think Foskey is a nice add to that defensive line. The Giants, John Michael Schmitz, Jalen Hyatt, this is an A+, this is easy, and I haven't given a whole lot of A+, but this has got to be an A+. John Michael Schmitz, who I wouldn't have been shocked if they took him at 25, and then Jalen Hyatt, who should have gone in the top 50. And I'm not a big Jalen Hyatt guy, but that speed plays, and he's a burner, and there are not a whole lot of guys like that who have the hands that Hyatt does, and the production that he does. So yeah, it was a little interesting that he fell to 73. Maybe it's just because of that slider frame. This is a Giants wide receiver room that has a lot of those guys. And, of course, the next pick turned out to be Cedric Tillman. So if it was me, maybe I would have preferred Tillman 73, Hyatt then to Cleveland at 74. But Giants made the pick. So they felt like Hyatt was a better player, and I love that over-the-top speed. Also could be a fine yak weapon as well. And you're just trying to find that guy who could be not only a home run threat, but a guy who could carry the load in that offense. And I don't know if that's necessarily Hyatt, but you're at least adding another guy into the mix that it could potentially be. Or because of his over-the-top speed, it makes the life of Sterling Shepard that much better. And Isaiah Hodgins that much more effective. Darren Waller working the middle of the field that much better because safeties are pushed back down the field. So, yeah, A+. Love the value they got with both these picks. Both those guys to me should have gone earlier. All right, next up, the Jets. Joe Tippmann, this was the one pick they had. Again, I am only going to judge you based on the picks that you made, not the picks that you don't have. So, yeah, I'll go A- here. I'll match the NFL Network grade. I think they go to good value. He's a fantastic scheme fit. And Connor McGovern, if memory serves, correct me if I'm wrong down below in the comment section, but that's a 1-year deal. So this is a guy that's going to sit behind. And he could also play guard, which I also think is pivotal because what's that tackle play and what's that tackle situation? And maybe they think that Elijah Vera Tucker might have to shift over to tackle. In that case, who's filling his spot? I think Tippmann can slide over to play guard and fill in for AVT if he does have to play some tackle. So more flexibility, more versatility across the offensive line, and also a long-term replacement for Connor McGovern. So I'll give it an A- there for New York. Eagles, I loved the round one. And I do think they're one of the biggest winners of the NFL draft, and especially after day 3 getting Kelee Ringo, but we'll talk about that in tomorrow's video. Tyler Steen is a guard. You're having to flip him from the left side of the offensive line to the right side, and he's your Isaac Seumalo replacement. I think he has the movement skills to fit in there, but a little bit of a transition. And then Sidney Brown, who, you know, I did mock the Eagles, and a lot of Eagles fans, rightfully so, pointed out, not the best tackler. I do think he's better than Terrell Edmunds, though. So I like the Brown pick more than the Steen pick, but I don't hate Steen pick whatsoever. So it'd probably be like a B+ for Steen, or a B for Steen, B+ for Sidney Brown. So all things considered, I'll give Philadelphia a B+ here for day 2. And that was after, you know, garnering an A for round 1. And then, of course, again, Kelee Ringo in the second. Yeah, what a draft for Philadelphia. And man, I got to be a homer here for just a second. I don't know if I've ever been this excited as a Steelers fan. And day 2 might have made me even more excited than day 1 because Broderick Jones wasn't necessarily one of my favorite tackles. Still in the top 4, but I liked Anton Harrison more. You had to give up a 4th, but then they come away with Joey Porter Jr., who we'll see how he fits in with Pat Pete being a completely different skill set on the other side. But we actually talked about it on the live show. Maybe Pittsburgh's trying to run some cover 6. And it's, Porter Jr. pressing at the line. And basically you could either play quarters based on what side he's playing. And he could play some man coverage. Or he presses the line and sits in a squat zone. He sits at the line of scrimmage. I think it'd be great there. Or you play some man coverage on the other side basically with cover 4. And that's how cover 6 plays out. Just, Google it if you don't know what cover 6 would look like or if you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about. Keanu Benton, this is a dream come true. This is the exact nose tackle I wanted the Steelers to get. So definitely in love with that pick. And on the live show, I was very happy to rejoice. And then Darnell Washington. He had a knee injury pop up, and that's what caused him to slide. But I don't care. He's worth the value in the shot of what he could be there at 93. Freiermuth's already a pretty good blocker. But Darnell Washington, now we're talking about Pittsburgh. They're going to really roll it back. Like, they're going to look like Tommy Maddox days, like 2 tight ends, Broderick Jones there at left tackle. They're going to put defensive lines in the dirt, and Najee Harris is smiling from ear to ear. Like, this is going to be old school ground and pound. Pittsburgh wanted to get back to the Jerome Bettis image, and damn if they haven't done it over the course of 3 off seasons, that is. So great value there with Darnell Washington, and it's an upgrade there at the blocking tight end spot. It sounds like they're going to let Derek Watt go, and then Connor Hayward's going to play fullback. So it all kind of works out. They took Hayward in the 6th round last year. So fantastic value, A+ for my favorite team. No bias. I actually think all 3 of these picks are extremely good value. But that being said, to give my favorite team an A+ does feel pretty good. 49ers. Oh, man. I'm sorry, Niners fans. I got to give you a D. I am not crazy about Jair Brown. I do think he really is he's your Jimmy Ward replacement because he kind of played towards the box and he's also got a nose for the football. So I kind of feel like he could be that nickel replacement for Jimmy Ward. And he's got more mass than some of the other safeties and also had a little bit better testing numbers than some of the other guys as well. Jake Moody, you took a kicker in the top 100. I mean, Moody was one of the better kickers in college football, but you drafted a kicker right after you traded for one too. So I know you're replacing Robbie Gould, but this could ultimately end up being, a pick that goes nowhere. And then Cameron Leatu, I'm just like, no offensive line. What are you doing at right tackle? Could you add another edge? I think so. Could you add another corner? I think so. I was like, wow, I don't hate Leatu as a player, and he was one of the top 10 tight ends for me, but I didn't see why they needed to take him at 101. I think they could have waited another round and probably gotten him. So I got to give a D to San Francisco. Sorry, Niners fans. I was not crazy about that selection, really by any means. Seattle here at on their day 2 picks. I'll go C+. Yeah, C+. I think NFL Network got it right. Derek Hall, yeah, I like that. And that's future reinforcements for, Darrell Taylor about to be a free agent at the end of the next season. And same thing with Uchenna Nwosu. And a guy that can win with a little bit more arm length and power than I think some of the guys they have on roster. But solidifying that edge position a little bit more, good value, or it's solid value. Hall might have slipped a little bit more, but we had a big run on edge up to this point. So I think 37 wasn't out of the realm of possibility. And with how the board played, I don't think it's terrible to evaluate Hall being worth it. And then you get Zach Charbonnet. If this was Devon Achane, it might single-handedly change just like an A- to a B+. But instead, I'll stick at C+. Charbonnet just feels like Kenneth Walker, but a little less special. And it's nothing against Charbonnet. He was my running back 3. But Walker has more long speed, and I think Charbonnet has more receiving ability, but it's still not like, oh, that's your receiving back opposite or in addition to Kenneth Walker. Feels like you have 2 guys that do the same thing. And it feels like a Rashad Penny replacement for sure, but it's like you already had skill set overlap with Walker and Penny. Why did we want to get a different body type, a different running back skill set there? And if you didn't think the value was right for those other guys, draft something else here. I don't know. It ultimately worked out because they got Olusegun Oluwatimi in the 3rd round, so they got that center need. I thought they might go here or go center here, but instead they went with Charbonnet at 52, which was a little bit of a head scratcher. I'll go C+ there for Seattle. It wasn't bad, but I think it could have ended up being better. Tampa Bay, Cody Mauch, Yaya Diaby. Yeah, I'll go B+, because Mauch is still a bit of a work in progress, but I've been saying this whole draft cycle, while I haven't been mocking it, they need, and Mauch, no pun intended there, they need another interior offensive lineman. And Mauch, whether it's guard or center, I think can fill that. Maybe he's your Jensen long-term replacement, or maybe he's an upgrade over Nick Leverett at guard. I think either could play. And then Yaya Diaby, I've been needing this team to get some more explosive edge rushers. No guarantee Shaq Barrett is the same dude he was 3 years ago. Coming off that Achilles injury, and even if he is, you need that 3rd pass rusher. Diaby, that type of explosiveness and ability to move across the defensive line, I'm here for it. I think it's not a bad value whatsoever at 82. Athletes go high, so I feel like he was going to go higher than what we saw in a lot of mocks. So Tampa Bay gets that third pass rusher, and then maybe a starter opposite of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, depending on Barrett as well. So I'll go B+ there for Tampa Bay. I like those picks a fair amount. Tennessee, then Will Levis. That's obviously a strong note. Yes, you have to move up 8 spots, but still the draft capital wasn't too crazy. And when it's moving up and getting rid of that capital for a quarterback, it's an easier argument to make, and it's just easier to validate. And then Tyjae Spears. It felt like this was like this is the point in Tennessee franchise history. Now, I'm not saying this is going to go down as like the most important day in Titans history, but this felt like the turning of the page from the Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry era. And this is like Tannehill's replacement, and then Tyjae Spears has a lot of the stuff that I like about Derrick Henry. I'm not saying he's going to be Derrick Henry, but he kind of makes sense to be like, if you want to keep your identity, but you have to move on from Henry at some point, Tyjae Spears could be that dude. This felt like the turning of the chapter from one era to the next. So interesting. I'll go A-. I'll match the NFL Network grade here. I'm obviously a Will Levis believer, quarterback 2 on my board. I think this could be a good spot for him to go. I know night 1 was frustrating. I know he probably rubbed a lot of people the wrong way with how he was taking it, but that's a tough spot to be in, especially, he's 24, but he's younger than me and kind of being embarrassed on national television. Like, what would you do in that spot? You probably wouldn't be happy. And plus, you got the invite to the draft. You thought you were going round 1, and then you were kind of sold a lie, essentially. But I think he makes a lot of sense as a Tannehill replacement, has a lot of those same skill sets, better arm, but has the mobility, and really give him a year to clean up his footwork. If they keep Tannehill, I think that could be the best situation maybe for him, and ultimately maybe fall into the second worked out for him. And then Tyjae Spears as that Derrick Henry replacement, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. So I'll go with an A- for Tennessee. And then we get to Washington, and I believe that is the last team we're going to talk about here today. So to round out the day 2 grades, Quan Martin and Ricky Stromberg. And look, I like Quan Martin himself, and is he an upgrade over Danny Johnston, the nickel? Yes. But you already went Forbes. I'm looking at an offensive line need. And then, yes, they go Ricky Stromberg later. Could be your Chase Rollier replacement. And maybe Nick Gates is playing left guard. I just felt like Washington could do better. I gave Forbes yesterday, if memory serves, a D. I think I got to go D+, C-. I'm kind of going back and forth. But I think Quan Martin's a really good player. 47 was maybe a little earlier than I expected him to go, but twitchy athlete that either could play free safety or nickel. Like, that position flexibility was going to kind of push him up boards, in my opinion. And then Stromberg, I would have taken Whippler ahead of Stromberg, but maybe Stromberg had the size that they were more so looking for, and that was kind of the determining factor here. I'll go C-. I'm really not in love with what Washington did, and you'll kind of hear me talk about that more in tomorrow's video. Sorry, Commanders fans, but unfortunately, I did not like the moves that Ron Rivera made. But that is going to do it for my day 2 grades. Let me know what you guys thought about day 2 of the NFL draft down below in the comment section. Who were the biggest winners? Who were the biggest value picks? And then ultimately, who do you think were the biggest losers and maybe biggest reaches from day 2? Let me hear all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Also, of course, who's your favorite team and what do you think of the picks your squad took? But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Seriously, it means the world to me if you hit that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content in your life. Also, definitely check out our sponsor day, BetUS. Their links for sign-up bonuses are down below in the description. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.